Hey yeah, this video is a bit of a rebuild of sorts. It's a Giant Yukon that I've had built up before, but I pulled it apart to give it a good once over and change some things up a bit. So this is basically just an old 26-inch mountain bike, chromoly frame, and it has horizontal dropouts, which is needed for the chain adjustment. With the fixed gear setup, I have less than $200 in this. So yeah, this is a fixed gear on a budget. Obviously that can fluctuate a little bit depending on if you use new tyres and that sort of stuff. As you can see, it's seen better days, but it's definitely got a lot of life left to give. So I'll go over the fixed gear rear wheel, then we'll get into it. This is the wheel that I used. It's been converted to a straight axle from a quick release, and it was actually a freewheel bike, and that's not taken off properly, but it does the job. I don't know if it was seized on, or I can't remember. It was a long time ago that I took it off. I've had this wheel for a few years running fixed gear, like on and off. Obviously it's been sitting around for a while. Bolt-on disc cog, solid axle, but now, I'll try and show you here. The axle is bent a little bit. Don't know if you can see that. So I'll try find another axle that has very small amount of binding. But by pulling it apart, I can show you guys everything that's involved with the fixed gear conversion. Parts. I'm just running one front brake. I just like that for safety, but for long descents and that sort of stuff and emergency stops, it's just good to have a front brake, just for safety's sake. And it is a law here, although it's not enforced really, but better safe than sorry. Fixed gear mountain bike conversion, you will need horizontal dropouts of sorts. So these are quite shallow, but they have enough, and they're also quite thick as well. And the only other requirement really is making sure that the wheel fits in your rear dropouts. So getting into it, the frame has been stripped, everything's all cleaned out. I'm going to throw some rust inhibitor, preventer, in the frame tubes. There are holes that you just squirt really as much as you can in, and then slosh it all around. Once that's all done, it's time to start assembly. The fun part. So I'll put the fork on and then I polish everything and then wax it. Get all the gunge off everywhere. That's nasty. So for polishing and waxing here, I'm just using some Turtle Wax products. It's a cream polish and just a spray on wax. So really simple, really easy to use. You can go quite a bit further using cutting compounds and that sort of stuff. But for an old frame that's got quite a bit of patina that I want to preserve, this is about the amount of polishing and waxing that I'd do to it. Sweet. Makes the paint feel really nice. Water beads off it and just makes the colours pop. Pop, pop, pop. Since this headset has no weather seal, I'm just going to use a bit of grease to prevent water and dirt and shit getting in. So you want a bit of grease in the threads, but you don't want too much because that can create binding when you're tightening it down. Now once everything's all cleaned, ready to put the axle in, you will need to set the distance between the two axle cones. So you can have it like offset to one side if you want, which is how I did it on the last one because the other one was extra long, so I offset it towards the drive side so I could have two nuts on that side just to act as a locking nut. You don't need it, but it's just because that was the axle that I had, or the first one that I grabbed out that seemed to work. This is another one which is a little bit narrower, so I'll make it even. So I'm showing you what to do from the drive side because it's easy to show you this way. But in reality, I do this with a non-drive side, as that's the side which I wanted to lock in place. But to get the axle at the right placement, I mocked it up with a couple bearings in the hub and then wind the axle until it's even on both sides. Tighten one, loosen the other. Do that quite tight, so that way when you undo the other side, it doesn't just spin. So you'll need to lock this. should do the trick. Grease that one side, put the axle through, then start greasing the other side. To get the bearings in, I put some grease in the hub, which stops the balls from rolling around, then I put them in one at a time. I'm also hovering the axle and the hub to block it off a bit. So I guess I missed recording the bearing adjustment, but just adjust them until they feel nice. Not loose, but not too tight. And make sure the locking nut is tight. And no more bent axle. As you can see, the wheel sits a little to one side. Without measuring this, I can see it needs to go to the left a little bit. Adjusting this out is pretty easy. By loosening the spokes on one side of the wheel, then adding tension on the other, the rim will shift over. Seeing as the rim needs to go to the left, that's the side that will need the tension. Make sure you do this evenly, so I started at the valve and did a full rotation to start with. This process is called dishing the wheel. You can technically run the wheel as is, but it adds additional stress to the wheel, bearings and tyre. It's easy enough to fix, all it takes is a spoke key. Hello, Vista. Hey. Now, because they're alloy, I'm not going to soak them. They also have these sort of badges. To adjust the toe and cantilever brakes, it requires this bit of movement here. Having it nice and clean makes that adjustment easy. Getting the cable right length plays a big role in lever feel. Too long or too short and it can press the inner against rough edges, such as on the ferrule or cable stops. Too short and the cable can pull out when at full turn, which is more common on the rear brake. I eyeballed and trimmed this a few times to get it right, and I put a small kink near the stem to bypass it under it. Be careful when bending cables as it can make the cable bind, but this shallow bend felt fine. Sometimes cables unwind when threading them in. You can lower the chances by twisting them in the opposite direction. Now comes the finicky cantilever parts. This is how I do it and it works for me, but I doubt it's the correct way. I start by roughly setting up the straddle cable and brake pads, putting the pads at an equal distance so they make contact when the calipers are about parallel to the rim. The straddle cable works best at 90 degrees. Another thing to note is that cable length here can introduce some chatter. By works best, I mean it has the most mechanical advantage. Supposedly. Now it's all mocked up, I see the spring tension needs slackening on one side so that the calipers move together. Then I just dial a bit of toe in, which helps clear water, mud and reduces noise. So I just slacken off the pad a bit and then apply a bit of a rotating force with the Allen key. Then I just cut the cables and throw some cable ends on. The seat post has 4 bolts holding it together, which is really overkill, so it takes quite a while to adjust everything, but once it's there, it's set in place. So all loaded up, got extra film stuff in there, tools, pump, water, good to go. I haven't rode this bike in a long time. A long and patient wait to return to off-road fixed gear riding. The wide tyres, the drivetrain eating me onto skid, varying terrain, fast compact gravel, the loose stuff, mud, puddles, and low cost so it can be scratched up without a care. All surrounded by fresh air, trees, birds, and cow shit is why I love this bike. The Giant Yukon fixed gear mountain bike. Going slow is more fun on a fixed gear bike. You're more in tune with the bike because your feet have more of a input on what the bike does. So its 46/18 gearing is mainly suited to road and some gravel riding. It's low enough that I can get up my hill, which is great, but isn't suitable for single track and steep hills. I've had 32/18 fixed before, and it's plenty low enough for off-road, but it ends up spinning out at a very low speed. This gearing lets me cruise in the mid 20 km/h range nicely, which isn't fast, but it's fine. Much better than what the 32 tooth chainring allows. If you didn't have any hills near you, or if you're fitter than me, then I would recommend going for a bigger chainring. I'll make a video sometime of using a small chainring off-road, just to show me spinning out and striking pedals on stuff. That's about it for this video. If you've got any questions, then leave them down below or just send me a message on Instagram. There's a 26-inch Schwinn mountain bike BMX cruiser type thing coming up next. So cheers for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.